All right. Well, then we will move on to Bill to give an update on pension solution.
Yeah, is this working? Aha, very good. Okay, hello again, everybody. So, you may remember the last EAC, Sue Ziegler and Kathy Kalis came and spoke to you a little bit about the Pension Solution Project. They said in their presentation that they were going to be hiring an employer readiness lead. That turned out to be me. So, I'm no longer in member account services, but I will be working closely with them throughout this project. I'm dedicated 100% to this new project, Pension Solution. Now, I want to share some extra details with you because I'm not quite sure the message really sunk in last time what this means. And so if you flipped ahead, maybe you've already seen it. And I gave a similar presentation to the Sutter Roundtable back in early October. So if you attended that, this is basically the same presentation, but I wanted to bring it to this broader audience so everybody's on the same page moving forward. Before I get into this, I want you to keep one thing in mind. This project is a multi-year project. The first implementation isn't likely until 2016, and it's going to be phased, so depending upon where things fall and the project schedule gets planned out, it may not impact you guys until maybe 2019 at the latest. So keep that in mind. It's a ways away. We got time to plan, time to get ready. So let's get into it. What does this mean? What does Pension Solution mean? It means we're replacing our START system, which many of you probably aren't familiar with, but it's our corporate database, our system of record. That's where all the member information lives today. It also means all these ancillary systems are going away with it, including the Secure Employer website. The Secure Employer website is going to be replaced with whatever system we procure. I'll get into why in a few minutes, but essentially these new systems, these modern pension administration systems, they all come bundled together with modules that are integrated well with one another. They talk to one another really good. A lot of these systems that exist today were custom systems built to tie into our main corporate database or START. So they're kind of standalone systems. They talk to START and they're integrated, but they're all custom. And it really doesn't make sense to procure this nice, brand new, shiny pension modern system and keep these other parts and try to integrate it with that system. It makes more sense to buy a system and that has all these parts already built into it. So that's one of the reasons. In addition to the Secure Employer website, I should have asterisked this, but the penalty and interest portion of the contribution account portal is also going to be retired and will be rolled into that new system. You'll probably still use the contribution account portal for account detail or account activity like payment information, payables, receivables, all of the accounting and contribution payment information will still be there. But the penalty part of that is going to be retired as well and be rolled into the new system. My CalSTRS going away, that'll be replaced. And there are other systems as well, but I thought these were the ones that really you have visibility of and would impact you the most. So what are we going to do between now and then? Well, we're going to form a readiness team similar to what we did with the employer reporting project. If you were around during that when we built the Secure Employer website, we had a team dedicated to getting employers ready for that system. We're going to do a lot of the similar activities that we did before. Right now it's just me, but we anticipate bringing on more people to help once we get further down the line in building this system. So a lot of the same activities we did before we're going to continue, and we'll be doing some other things as well. But rest assured, there's going to be plenty of support to get you guys ready for that transition. We're going to reestablish the employer forum group. If you participated last time, this group got together on a monthly basis about, mostly we did virtual meetings online, but we did in-person ones once or twice a year. And we came together to discuss requirements, design, testing, training, really to get your feedback on the functionality that we're thinking of delivering and seeing if it passes the sniff test. So that group is going to be probably around 30 to 50 members, we're thinking. You should see a invitation soon going out. I'm jumping ahead. That's actually later slides. So if you're interested in participating, please seriously consider that. The pilot group is a subset of the forum, and what the pilot group was mainly responsible for was for testing. So it was a smaller group, and this group was already a part of the employer forum that did actual testing when we got that far down in the project. And then, of course, employer readiness will be ongoing throughout. So why are we replacing the Secure Employer website? I sort of got into that with the modules, and it doesn't make sense to really take these custom systems and try to integrate them with this nice new shiny. The other thing to consider is, SEW was a nice shiny front end that we slapped to stop the bleeding of exceptions. Remember, that was the big mantra, exceptions. We had millions and millions of exceptions coming in the door that we wanted to stop. So we created the Secure Employer website as a automated way for you to submit payroll information to us. You get those business rule edits, those integrity check edits that everybody loves, that you have to fix. And it scrubs the data, cleans the data, gets it clean through the door. That was really the whole point of building the Secure Employer website, was to clean up the data. The things that we didn't really look at real hard were, are we collecting the right information? Are we collecting the right data? Are some of the formats we want to collect in the future? For instance, the one that I use a lot is assignment codes. I think those assignment codes have been around for, I don't know, forever. And a lot of them don't make sense, and they're not real specific. I would like to see the assignment codes kind of get expanded a little bit, and maybe we have 50 assignment codes or 100 assignment codes to get real specific. I know. Again, I don't want to scare anybody, but those are the things we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at, can we make the assignment codes better? Do we need contribution codes? Does it make sense to even have contribution codes? Should we retire some of those? Should we retire some of the pay codes? All that stuff is going to be on the table and looked at. Now, I don't want to scare you and say, it's going to be this big thing, but we want to take a look at that, and it'll probably end up being about this big. It'll be changed, but it's not going to be huge. But we really want to make it more efficient and streamline it. So really stop the bleeding of errors coming in the door. With this project, we want to make reporting even better, faster, more efficient, makes more sense, in addition to scrubbing the data. So this is really an opportunity to make what the Secure Employer website started even better. That's the message. We're going to make reporting even better with this system. So what does that mean? Likely the formats are going to change. In fact, I shouldn't say likely, they are going to change. The file formats are going to change. We'll be collecting new data. We'll probably retire some codes. We'll probably introduce some new codes. It's hard to say what it's going to look like, because until we bring a vendor on board and we get a system in here, we really don't know what the capabilities are. We want to align our reporting with whatever system we procure, meaning that, yeah, it's great and all that I think that maybe we should have 100 assignment codes, but if the new system, can't accommodate that, it's not going to happen. We really need to take a look at what the system provides and the capabilities it has, and align any improvements or reporting with that new system. Other things that are going to change, there's probably going to be new or different reporting processes and procedures. For instance, today, there's an address file, there's an MR87 file. When I think about it, it kind of makes sense to combine those two because they're similar in nature, or, just the whole reporting in general, the way it's done today, is going to get looked at for improvement and increased efficiency. So next steps. We are going to send out an invitation for the employer forum early next month. So be looking for that. It'll probably be posted to SEW. If you're interested in participating, and I would encourage you to participate because it's your chance to really give us some feedback on this project and mold how the solution is going to look. One of the first things that we're going to do with this group is we're going to take a look at the high-level requirements. These have already been drafted, and they're somewhat finalized because they had to go into the request for proposal that we'll be publishing very, very soon. So those are sort of set in stone, but it's going to give you an opportunity to see those requirements, to understand the direction we're going in, and to prepare for changes that are coming. We will be developing a set of detailed requirements. These are really, really high level right now, and we definitely want to bring you in on those detailed requirements and to shape and mold those detailed requirements to get them right. But first, we're going to do a high level requirement review, and that should be happening early next year, if you're interested. If you don't participate in the forum or you just don't think you have the time, that's fine. We plan on giving you regular communication through EAC, through SEW, the announcement section. We'll probably do some info sessions. Who knows? We might do some road shows, come out and do some presentations out throughout California. So we'll definitely be communicating even if you don't participate in the forum. Don't worry about that. High-level timeline. So that RFP is going to go out. It's imminent. It should go anytime now. One of the first things we're going to do with you guys is do that high-level requirements review and establish the employer forum. We think we'll have the vendor on board early 2015, and that's really when we can start developing the project schedule, project plan, and understand where these pieces are going to fall and how it's going to impact you folks. And again, until we really know what the project plan is and the schedule of events, it's sort of tentative from that point forward, from when the vendor comes on. We anticipate we're going to do some business process realignment, detailed requirements, pre-implementation activities once the vendor's on board up until the first release or 2016. And again, we don't know where employer reporting is going to fall. It may be 2016, it may be later. So it's going to be a phased implementation starting in 2016 through 2019. So we got lots of time, lots of time. And then this project is scheduled to end. Okay. Any questions for me? Thank you. It's going to be fun. No? Okay, if you do have questions, we have a dedicated website, renew@calstrs.com, so you can always email in and I'll jump right on it. Thank you.
Next, Peter, give an update on where things are as far as developing regulations around credible compensation.
I know this has been a rather contentious issue, so my name is Pedro O'Healy, and I brought Cassie up here as my to take all the flack coming, so she'll stand in front of me. It's actually not that bad. But before we get started, as you heard, Bill has gone over to the project, and we've hired a new manager to take Bill's place, and you might be familiar with the gentleman. Chris Owens from CalPERS is going to be joining CalSTRS, and Chris is in the back of the room. So we welcome him to our leadership team, and I'm sure we'll be working closely with Bill, so it's good. In your packet, you're going to find a handout that is entitled Credible Compensation Concepts. And we developed this in preparation for the regulations going to the board in December. This is the kind of the general principles that we'll be addressing in the regulations. There are some changes, and so I want to highlight some of those changes going through. I'm not going to read each one of them because I know you're very capable of reading, and you'll be very capable of reading the regulations also and understanding those. But as Joyce was mentioning earlier, that whenever we do any sort of legislation or regulations, we'll be giving direction also to the employers. And so there will be an employer directive that goes with this to provide additional guidance. On the first one is salary, and it comes under credible compensation includes. When we say credible compensation includes, that's both for DB as well as DBS. So it's credible compensation to the defined benefit program. But salary goes to DB. And that's been our focus, is that if you pay something in salary, it goes to the defined benefit. The next part I want to draw your attention to is mostly stipends. And those don't necessarily go to DB. They may go to DB or DBS. It depends on how they're paid. And so if they're limited, then it's going to go to DBS. Very similar to the way we're working at PEPRA. So there's going to be similarities between the regulations and PEPRA. In the next one, under credible compensation does not include, I think they're pretty clear. And these are things that previously we had put to DB, such as cash in lieu and expenses. Those will now no longer be credible compensation. And I want to draw your attention to the third bullet, because it may not be real clear. It says a good or service for which the cost is paid by the employer to a third party or otherwise covered by the employer. That's really talking about expenses. So a good or service is an expense. So it's similar to if you're paying a transportation expense to someone for performing duties of having to travel around the district, that is an expense paid by the employer, and that will no longer be credible compensation. On the next page, in the restructure of compensation, I just want to draw your attention to that if the restructure occurs, it has to be a permanent restructure. And we're going to look at the permanency to determine whether it is a restructure that can be reported to CalSTRS. If it's outside the standard time frame and affects final compensation, or it's implemented for a Class 1 and affects the final compensation is reversed upon the hire of the immediate successor, we're going to look at it as a pension enhancement to a pension benefit, and those increases would go to the DBS. That's kind of complex, so we'll have some questions at the end here, but truly we're really looking at this going towards developing the regulations, and those regulations will be going to the board in December. The compensation earnables in that section, the first bullet really deals with additional assignments. And the new part about this is that we're allowing to be able to create a class of employees based on different job duties and programs. So potentially you could have a different class of employees that has the department chair in it. And so this is a new concept, and we're going to be, it's being introduced in the regulations. The other issue here is that if you have an additional, if you're going to report it as an additional assignment and not part of the class of employee salary, then that additional assignment must have a compensation earnable assigned with it. So you're going to have to develop that compensation earnable for additional assignments. It can't just be reported as a flat stipend. It will have to be reported as additional assignments. So it will generate service credit, and then potentially, if it goes over a year, it's going to go to DBS. Next is the class of employees, and there's a bigger focus now on class of employees. Truly, this is the employer's responsibility, and that's where we'll be placing, the kind of the burden on you to say who is in this class of employees and why does it constitute a separate class. One thing that we did note that an employer may not establish a class of employees if it's just adding additional work days or time to the day, and if the restructure is not permanent. We also want to make sure that it is not either benefit formula or retirement program based, or has a based upon an age or a threshold or a service credit threshold. So, for example, everyone gets this new class of employees because they turned 55 and they've got a 3-year final comp, so now they can be in this class of employees. No, that's not going to work. So. The next areas where we've been working, there's been a lot of discussion on consistent treatment of compensation and how to determine that. Because in the statute, it's not real clear. And so the team's been working very diligently trying to determine how we're going to consider what is consistent treatment of compensation. And I want to draw your attention to the second bullet, that if the pattern of assignment of duties to the employers during the final compensation, the additional compensation, if there is a pattern of assignment to duties to the employees during the final compensation period, the additional compensation for those duties is considered inconsistent. What we're saying there is that if we see a pattern of people being put into a position and then taken out of the position and are retiring, and then another group of people being put in that position retiring. We're going to say that that's a pattern that's inconsistent for pension enhancement, so it's not going to be allowed. If something's determined to be inconsistent, then it doesn't go to DB, it goes to DBS. So that increase would go to DBS. And then I'm going to turn over to the last page, which is the compensation paid a limited number of times. And the focus here is that this what goes, compensation that's paid for a limited number of times is credible to the defined benefit supplement program. That's already in the statute. Where it's putting the regulations is that it has to meet both the following criteria. It's not an ongoing payment, and it's contingent upon meeting one of those following, like service objective, hiring or transfer or retirement. So, for example, if you've got a longevity bonus and you pay it once a year, it's not ongoing. It's just once a year, correct?
Once, if it's ongoing yearly. it
It's
would
ongoing
be-
yearly, but if
yes.
it's not, if it's like you pay it once in their career and then
Right,
it's not ongoing.
correct.
And there's 2 exceptions to this, and remember, this is for the 2 at 60 members. It's not for the members subject to PEPRA. And it's parity pay and pay for state lottery funds will continue to be credible to the defined benefit program. We're pulling those out from the others. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of information that is going to be in the regulations that we introduced to the board in December. The team has been working probably full-time for the last 6 months on it, and so I need to acknowledge the team for this, especially Cassie and Valerie from Member Account Services, Ellen and Joycelyn from PD&C, and Carolyn and DeBoer from Legal, and then Kathy and Kurt from our Audits Division. Additionally, we've taken in a lot of input from employers and other stakeholders, including CTA and the Association of California School Administrators. And so we're trying to get all that input so when we introduce these regulations, they're going to be pretty complete. And so once the board adopts them and we go to the administrative law to get it actually issued, there will be that 45-day comment period. And our plan is to actually proceed with it and hopefully have them implemented by July 1st, 2014. And if there's any questions, Cassie will be glad to take them. Francis.
Okay, clarification, back on page 1 where you covered credible compensation does not include car allowance, cell phone allowance, those types of expenses. At the conferences that you held earlier on where you had some district participation along with county offices, I think there's a misunderstanding there. A question was asked, will car allowance, cell phone allowance, those types of allowances be considered creditable going forward based on this? And the response was, I believe it'll be creditable if it's part of base salary. I think the interpretation was that CalSTRS is suggesting or recommending that they be made part of base salary.
If it is salary, then it is credible to the defined benefit program. So I would agree that if that's where you look at the restructure and where you look at the restructure permanent, that we do expect to see restructures of contracts that are going to take those allowances or those expenses and put them into salary. And if that's a permanent restructure, then it would be credible to DB.
So then if it's in contract currently that a person gets paid X amount of salary, plus they're entitled to X amount for car allowance, X amount for cell phone allowance, if they restructure their contract that says their base salary is now X amount, which includes those allowances and makes no mention of those allowances, then it's base salary.
Base salary, correct.
Yes.
Other question? On your example of department chair, of creating a class of 1, where you may have, for example, a teacher who is also department chair. And in order for the department chair to be creditable service without release time, then they create a class of one, which is a combined duty of teaching and department chair. Districts move department chair responsibilities from year to year to different teachers. Is there going to be an issue with employees moving from one class to another?
No, there wouldn't be an issue with that, but the bullet that Peter was talking about later on, if we happen to see that there's a trend or a pattern, like everybody that's around 60 happens to move into these and it's a higher final comp than just teaching, we would look at that. But you're now basically making that position a teacher / department chair. So if people go into that position and rotate in and out, we wouldn't have a problem with that. We may see the compensation increases if it hits our parameters, but we would be able to see why, because we would go back to you guys. Okay, they went from teacher to teacher / department chair, and that should be fine.
Okay, but going back and forth without having that retirement issue in it would be a problem.
What do you mean the
1 year they're
retirement issue?
department chair, they're in a class of one as a department chair.
Okay.
The next year they just go back to being a teacher. And then maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, they go back to being department chair. And they're going back and forth between these classes because the district is assigning different teachers at different times that responsibility.
I would think that would be fine.
Yeah, I don't foresee a problem. And really, the issue is making sure that they're not doing it to enhance their pension
Right.
benefit.
The
So,
issue would be if they appointed department chairs for a year and then they retired and their successor was a year and then retired and the successor was a year and then
Right.
retired.
perfect timing. The league gets exercise, go to the back and then back in front.
Heather Kerpieski from Ventura County. I just wanted to clarify on the class of employees, and I spoke with Cassie about a week earlier about this, just wanted to put it on record. There's an issue with the Director of Human Resources, technology people, having been in STRS, should be PERS. I wasn't under the impression that there was going to be something coming out. I just wanted to kind of confirm that. I'm sure it's not just an issue in our county.
Yeah, that's really not part of the credible compensation. That's more of an issue of credible service. And so we'd have to look at those duties to see if they're performing credible service. And I understand there is an issue out there amongst employers. And one thing that we are looking at and working on a circular right now is if the person was previously a CalSTRS member and they take a position that we now determine that should have been classified, but they would have had the right to the election, but the election form for some reason was not completed, that we're going to put out a circular that's going to hopefully will allow people to just go ahead and submit that form so we have it on file, so that then they can continue. The bigger issue is whether the person is new to the position, let's say a director of IT, and we take a look at it and it doesn't look like the service is credible, then it's not credible. We would say it's not credible compensation, not credible service to CalSTRS, and they should be in either an alternative retirement system or CalPERS, whatever's offered.
But one of the things that's come out in the conversation around that is we've heard the definition of what's credible services hasn't changed in our lifetime. Whereas the way that schools operate has, and there may be positions out there that are certificated in nature, but they don't meet the literal definition. So we've invited people to come. It's not anything that we have any expertise in, but if there looks like that language needs to be updated about what's credible service with the understanding of what it is we're trying to cover, we're more than open to looking at modifying those definitions as appropriate in order to reflect more modern times.
Especially, I know I've had a couple inquiries about director of IT where the person may be supervising labs or something at a community college. And so it seems IT is coming more in the mainstream into the curriculum for instruction or academic. So, we do, like Ed said, we may need to look at revising exactly what's credible service, and so we can actually bring those people into CalSTRS.
When can we see the complete regulations, like before the board meeting? Like,
They should be out there, I would say at the end of this month, because the board is meeting on December 2nd. So once the board items are posted, you would be able to see it at that
okay,
point.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna Lambert from Riverside County. I have a question. If we currently have contracts that specifically said employees are paid car allowances or cash in lieu of benefits, they are reportable as of now, and we should not be making any changes until this becomes into effect.
The regulations are prospective, and we are looking at that issue of how it applies to contracts previously. So at this time, I can't give you a clean answer on that one, because we may end up looking at a contract, and if the contract clearly says that it's an expense, the way the statute reads, the statute says that job-related expenses are not credible. So it's on a case-by-case basis at this point.
So if we have current contracts, would you advise for us to send them to CalSTRS for them to review now, or should we wait?
I wait. But I think going forward, you can see the clear direction is that they should be structured so that it's salary.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a question also? Or, no, okay. Any other questions for Pedro? All right, thank you.
Thanks. So next is Phil to give an update on Gatsby.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me talk to you about this wonderful subject that everybody wants to hear about. I can tell, right? I'm not going to talk about all of Gatsby, just Gatsby 67 and 68. They're actually making lots of additional changes than just pension accounting that we're actually tracking, but I'm going to focus just on 67 and 68. Just as a reminder, this particular change in accounting standards is focused on how pension plans and the employers that participate in pension plans report their pension liabilities on their financial statements. Specifically, they've come up with a new way of calculating the liability, and they've asked that the employers report the unfunded portion of that liability on their financial statements. So for those of you that haven't heard this before, that's the context in which we're talking about. This is now effective for this fiscal year for us. So CalSTRS will have to report in its financial statements a net pension liability calculated in the new way. It'll be in our notes. It doesn't actually change our financial statements themselves. It's just in the notes. The notes will be there for the employer base to utilize to create their financial statements the next year. So it applies for us this year and all the employers next year. Now, there's still a question as far as whether or not the employers will actually have to put this in their financial statements or not. That question hasn't been answered. We're going to run down the assumption that the employers are going to need this information, and so we're going to provide it in our financial statements. So what I wanted to do is bring you up to speed on what we've been doing and kind of where things are going and any new information since the last time. I don't know that I was here the last meeting, but I think I was here the meeting before. Okay, so I mentioned that we've started our implementation effort. We've put together a team. We're going through and we're creating new schedules. We're trying to figure out what information needs to be in the financial statements and in the notes to provide the employers what they need to do the job. We were just at a conference of our colleagues. Believe it or not, there is a group that is focused just on financials for pension systems. And there was over 175 of us, and we went through Gatsby 67 and 68 a lot, which went over every facet of it. And our team really learned a lot. We learned we got a lot of work ahead of us, and our efforts to educate those that are going to be affected by it are going to turn up really quickly. Our outreach efforts, we had two scheduled. We just spent some time at Santa Clara County Office of Education. We kind of leveraged one of their existing meetings, and we spent a half hour, 45 minutes sharing with 25 different districts kind of what Gatsby 68 means to them. Gave them examples. I used some financial statements that I found and plugged some numbers in there to make it look like what their financial statements will really look like in the end. They're estimates, they're guesses, but it kind of gives everyone a feel for it. I've yet to find a set of financial statements for an employer, for a school district, that doesn't get turned upside down when this liability is added to it. So to the extent you have some role in financial reporting, or you know somebody that has some role in financial reporting, and they're not aware of this yet, please tune them in. My number is out there on the if you go out there on CalSTRS.com under the employer tab, there's a GASB. My name is out there. My email is out there. If they don't know about GASB 68, please have them get in touch with me. We're trying to get as much outreach as we can. We have another County Office of Education visit in December at San Bernardino. So if you're in that area and you want to join in, let me know. I'll make sure that you guys are involved. One of the things that we heard from our colleagues in our conference was that that we're way behind in some of them. Some of them are actually, they've already got webinars out there on their websites for their employer groups. They've actually gone through and created mock financial statements with their employers. So we're trying to ramp up as fast as we can. We've got meetings scheduled from now and for the next 2 weeks to kind of work through how we can create a series of webcasts that will help the employers kind of understand what they need to do from a financial statement perspective. The one piece that's still hanging for all of us, and one of the reasons we haven't gone as far as some of our colleagues, is GASB sets out all these rules. This is what you will do in your financial statements. Then there's the other side. There's the auditors, right? The auditors come in and say, well, GASB says to do this, so we expect it done this way. We haven't gotten the auditors' guidance yet. The AICPA has not issued their guidance. We expected it last month. We heard at our board meeting last week that it's still 45 to 60 days out. So mid to late December, first part of January, before we actually hear what the auditors will expect from a financial statement presentation standpoint and what they're going to do to validate the financial statement information. I say that because we're going to add some additional schedules to the back of our financial statements so that we won't have 1,600 school district auditors calling us up saying, why is this number like this? We expect it like that. So we want our auditors to audit it. But we don't know what that audit looks like yet. We don't know how much additional work that's going to require on our end and on the employer's end. We're starting to get some indications that it's going to be anywhere from 20 to 30% of an increase in our audit side. We have no feel for what it's going to be on the employer side, but I would guess it'd be similar. Until we get that, we don't really know for sure, but we're going to start, every time we get this information, we're going to build it into the information that we're sharing with all of our outreach efforts. The last piece of the puzzle is GASB actually is going to put out their 68 implementation guide, the employer guide. I heard 2 weeks ago that's going to be into January, 1st of February. We're already 6 months into GASB 67, so that only gives people about 5 to 6 months to kind of get a feel for what they're doing before their year of implementation kicks in. So it's a tight timeline. We would expect the first year of implementation to be tight on everybody. That's all I got for you. You all look so excited to hear it. Like I said, my name and number is out there on CalSTRS.com under the employers and under GASB. So if you have questions, you have colleagues back at your districts or your counties that want to talk about it, please have them give me a call or send me an email. That's one of the things I'm doing these days. Any questions?
Hi, do you know how you're going to get this data for GASB to the districts? Are you going to send it to the county office, everything, or is going to go to districts directly?
So which information are you talking about? The outreach efforts or the actual financial statement information?
Actual financial statement.
So the way we've got this planned out currently is that our financial statements will be augmented by several schedules. One of those schedules is going to be a monster. It's going to have 1,659 lines that represent contributions from the prior year and that particular district's proportionate share percentage of that total amount. It'll be a humongous schedule that goes in the back. There'll also be a secondary schedule that provides the more actuarial data. That'll be the net pension liability, pension expense, and any deferred inflows and outflows that have to be amortized. Those amounts will be out there as an aggregate, and the combination of that schedule and the proportionate share should give the districts most of what they need to do their financial statements.
You will directly be sending that to each district?
It'll be attached to our financial statements, which will be available via the web. So when we publish our financial statements.
So
they'll be
they
out
will
there.
have to go on their own and
On the-
check it?
That's currently the plan. Things may change, but that's currently the way it's set up.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
So a couple of things. One, there was a question that came up, and Peter actually is a little bit different than what I thought it said. There's a question that came up in the credible comp that we want to answer, and it says, if the school district had been providing total compensation in which the base salary was permanently increased by the employer health insurance cap and the employee paid all the health insurance, but now they're rethinking that and instead remove the cap from base salary, would they still be able to use that total compensation years as final comp? So they're doing a permanent restructuring, basically to put, instead of having the employee paying all the health insurance, they'll now divide it. She wants to know whether or not those years, if that's a higher salary year, whether that could still be used as final comp.
I think I probably want to look at it more closely, but my concern would be if they were just putting the health insurance into salary, then requiring an employee to purchase health insurance, then it's kind of like a pass-through, and I would say that would not be credible, because what they're doing is just inflating salary to cover health benefits, that they're requiring health benefits, which is usually a fringe benefit, so I would want to look at it more closely.
So I guess at this point, the answer is, it depends.
Yes.
So we'll have, can't go wrong with an answer like it depends. And then the other one, and this is more of a housekeeping thing for those of you who are here. If you had to write your name in on the sign-in sheet rather than just initialing next to it so that you're new to it, could you see Carmen at the end so we can get your business card to make sure our listserv is updated so you're on our distribution list? With that concludes the items. So I want to open it up to open forum or any discussion, any other issues that you want to bring up? Yes, in the back.
Pam Fowler, Sacramento County Office of Education. I guess the other month we were working on some issues with penalties and interest. And we had a district with a huge lottery payment that were reported as special comp for prior period. We were advised that the prior period they would basically give us the penalties and interest, that they would not get penalties and interest on the lottery. It was a lottery bonus payment. And they said we could, in the future, report it as current month. Then the question came up, well, what about other special comp lines? Do we need to report those as current month? And we were told yes. And I just want to make sure before we start a new policy about reporting special comp that we are reporting it correctly to STRS. We don't want to get audited later based on one opinion. So that's my question is, can all special comp lines be reported as current period as opposed to prior to avoid penalties and interest? Or is there a ruling that we should, or a guideline that we should be using?
Pedro?
I can take it offline and with you afterwards.
What? I didn't hear what she said.
Can you repeat it?
Okay. It's regarding reporting stipends, special comp lines.
Pam, is it more of an issue of retroactive, that the compensation is for retroactive pay?
In many cases, yes, but I just want to confirm what types are okay to report as current as opposed to taking a stipend and saying, okay, we're going to report it as current month because we were told it was okay to do that. Because sometimes you get a payment that maybe they work for three months, yes, and we're going to pay it on this month, and you'll get the full compensation. That would be a retro stipend. But you could have another type of stipend that maybe you didn't pay because it got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
You follow me?
I guess the bigger issue is whether it's when was it earned. So it should be reported as earned accordingly. So it appears like it should be retroactive in that case if it was for 3 months prior. If it's earned in the current period, then you'd report it with the current. If it was made in, I guess the problem is that
Well, like in a
wasn't
lottery
paid.
payment, there may be an agreement that they're not going to pay them every single month for the lottery payment because of the way the money came in, or the bargaining unit, or simply the fact of how much work it is to get it paid. So it may get paid after the fact, and it's per an agreement that the district has with their employees.
Yeah, I think I'd want to see the agreement. I think it's okay in that situation to pay it as current if it's to the agreement. It might be a problem with your 2 at 62 members because it's not paid every period. So that's something that you would want to negotiate at that level to make sure that it is paid every period so that it's creditable for those individuals.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other issues? Okay, well, so then, the next meeting, as we said, will be February 12th, at CalPERS. We'll be in the morning, CalPERS will be in the afternoon. Are there other items that you want on the agenda? We'll put legislation on there. Do you want to have a further update on the initiative? I mean, I guess we can sort of see how things are going on that, whether or not we discuss that. Do you want an update on pension solution? We'll certainly do credible compensation because by then we'll have had the meeting. In fact, we will have had 2 meetings with the board on the credible compensation regulations, so we'll definitely include that. And then GASB, are there any other items that people want to make sure we include? I'll try to get a resolution on the issue about predetermining compensation that had come up before. And if we have something substantive to discuss, we'll put it on the agenda. Anything else? If not, we will see you next year in a different location. Have a great holiday.